Happening now, Rhode Island's Attorney General is holding a press conference about the release of his office's report on child sexual abuse in the Diocese of Providence. This presser seems to be getting underway. Let's listen in.
For those of you who have seen the report, it's a long report. It nears 300 pages. The appendices, about the same volume. I'm going to move as fast as I can, but this could take a little bit of time. Before I begin, rather than wait to the end, there are some people who really need acknowledgement. There are many survivors that you've heard from, I'm sure, in the past. You'll hear more from in the future. Some are referenced by name in the report. Some are not. Not every survivor wanted to be named. We know there are survivors of clergy sexual abuse in Rhode Island that still haven't come forward, and that is just the reality when these crimes are committed. But I want to start by recognizing the survivors that are in the room, and they are Dennis LaPrade, Claude LeBouf, and Robert Houlihan. They're here. All three of you have my gratitude for your courage and bravery in working with us and putting this report together. And it really means a lot to the team and to me that you're here. So thank you. I also want to thank, as I mentioned or implied a minute ago, I want to thank the survivors that are out there that are not in the room, those that we know of and those that we don't. Know that we spent the time to make this report as strong a work product as we could because we felt like you deserved it. And none of us on the team that put it together, between the state police and our team, myself included, wanted to issue a report that did not do the crimes and the survivors justice. I also forgot to mention two survivors. I didn't forget. It's the wrong phrase. I neglected to mention. But they are very much on my mind because they are good friends of mine. And they are Dr. Hub Brennan and Dr. Ann Webb, who I have walked this journey with. We've walked it together in many ways. Hub, where are you? There you are. And Dale, Hub's wife. I remember, Hub, when we sat down, I think I was still running in a coffee shop in Jamestown, and you told me, I wasn't sure why we were meeting, I think, at the time. I knew you were a physician, and I thought we were going to talk about healthcare, and we talked about this, and the impression that you and Ann have made on me in that 8+ years now. Just know that our conversations will stay with me for a very, very long time, and I'm grateful for your friendship. I want to thank Carol McEntee, who's been a fighter here, has yelled at me for not moving fast enough on many occasions, sometimes right in this room. And I hope, Carol, that you've now seen the report, and I hope that it's something that you're proud of, and you are a part of it for sure. Mark McKinney, you've been a champion on this issue, and a friend. Both of you have been good friends to me over the course of my political career, and I'm grateful for that and your keen interest in this issue here. The legislation that you've sponsored and have championed is legislation that you'll see we refer to in our report, that we recommend passage of, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. All right, so here at the office, when we started this back in 2019, pre-COVID, if you can believe it, it seems like another lifetime ago, there have been a series of people that have worked on this matter, on this report, and I'm going to read from the bottom of the list to the top, because in some ways it's chronological. So Chris Joseph, who actually went to high school with my eldest son and grew up in South Kingstown, needed a job after college, and a really smart young man. I think he went to Boston College, if memory serves. And anyway, I mention him because he was the first person that we put on it who was not a lawyer. He has since gone to law school and is practicing law, so that gives you a sense of how long this has taken. So I guess I'm in a sense, casting a little shade at myself by saying going through all that. But Chris really got this rolling. Wyeth Taylor worked on this as a paralegal. She's now writing novels. So Wyeth and Chris, you're out there somewhere, and thank you. Ryan Holt, a former Special Assistant Attorney General in the office, my first legislative aide, worked on it. Aidan Giusti worked on it. Farron Fuqua, who's a policy analyst, has helped on this report. Allison Fonseca, Jonathan Burke, Steve Dambrook, Penelope Murphy, Sean Malloy, Andrea Morrow, Patrick Dolan, and last, but most important, Adi Goldstein, who has marshaled this project from the beginning and has worked countless hours on it herself. I also want to acknowledge the state police, led by Lieutenant Heather Palumbo. We have other members of their special victims unit here. Detective Austin Leverrier, Detective Leverrier is here, Detective Lindsay Laurie, Detective Jeffrey Munoz, and Detective Sergeant Kyle Draper, who's done a ton of work with this office on important cases over the years that I've been Attorney General. So, all right. So with that, we will we'll get started. All right. So, some of you may have seen this slide as we were getting ready to start. The bottom line is, as I'll get into, is this report was done by recreating history from a lot of documents that the diocese produced to us. We did not have the benefit, as I'll get into, of speaking to diocesan witnesses. So the team really had to go through over 250,000 pages of records, get them organized, go through them, understand them, piece them together to be able to tell this very complicated 75-year story. The contents of the report, we'll just go through the overview here. There's a letter from me to the public that I won't really spend any time on. It's there for folks to read if they like. There's an executive summary. Chapter 3 is the legal framework and analysis, which I won't spend a lot of time on there. It's included in the report so that the public will have a sense of the various laws that apply in this area, both to the church potentially and individual priests. That law is complicated. I prosecuted cases using those laws. The best approach, if you're a prosecutor, is to understand your facts and then go to the law, because to try to keep it all in your head is difficult as studying for the bar exam. Chapter 4 is an overview of our investigative findings. Chapter 5 covers the time frame from 1950 to 2000, when we begin, as we'll see, to see change on the part of the diocese, driven in part by survivors coming forward with the courage that they did, and the church as a whole, from the Vatican and across the nation, beginning to understand they had to change their historical approaches. Chapter 6 goes over the past failures of the diocese to report child sexual abuse complaints to law enforcement. Chapter 7 goes through the diocese reforms and responses to clergy abuse from 1990 to the present. As we'll see, those reforms were initially, I would describe them as attempts. As time went on, they got better, but there is still considerable room, from our perspective, for improvement. That's reflected in Chapter 8, our concerns with their modern responses to the clergy abuse crisis. Chapter 9 contains our recommendations to the diocese. Chapter 10 are our legislative recommendations. We conclude with an epilogue. Then we have a series of appendices. And I recommend them to you. I think as important as the report itself, which, as you'll see, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, is a narrative, Appendix A, which is the which are the clergy summaries, really lay out priest by priest what happened here, meaning what these priests were credibly accused of, in some instances charged with by indictment or otherwise, and equally important, what the diocese's response to it was. And the takeaway that I have from these summaries is, there are many, it's the horrible abuse in its own right. You have to pause there, because what these priests did to children is, of course, life-changing and life-lasting. But what the diocese did in response to the allegations in history is striking, and it's strikingly awful. And it's awful in the sense that these priests were shuffled around and put in positions by the diocese so that they could abuse more children. And we see that over and over and over and over again. And those summaries for each priest tell you where those priests were assigned, over what dates, and then in the narrative that follows, what they were accused of credibly, and then what the diocese did, most importantly, didn't do in response. Okay, let's see here. I'm trying to move, oh, there we go. All right. Okay. So, one of the questions, I guess, from the start is, why do the report? I think if you read it, it's obvious, but, and we'll get into some of the other reports done by other AGs, but, my takeaway, I've worked on this report now personally twice, really going through it with a pen and with an editor's point of view, and once back in the spring and then once again in the last month or so, and I think the diocese, based on what I've read in recent weeks, would have you believe that what you're about to hear and what you've read or are about to read is old news, in a sense, that it's history, that it doesn't matter anymore because everything is working out great now. And there's no question that the risk to children today is much lower than it was. But the public deserves to know the truth, in my view, and they deserve to know it as a complete story, not a series of short stories that are told over time or over decades as priests are charged or as the media takes a particular interest over a certain period of time. The public deserves to know the whole story from 1950 to 2026, to see it all in its raw emotion and horror and impact. And it's not, in some sense, it's a history, but it is certainly a living history, because Hub Brennan is still alive, and Ann Webb is still alive, and Dennis LaPrade is still alive. Survivors out there are still alive. This is a living history, and it will live on as long as victims of clergy sexual abuse live themselves, and as their family members live. Because there's no question, I think, if you talk to survivors, that the way that they've been impacted impacts their own families as time goes on, both horizontally, meaning siblings, parents, which is a complicated question in its own right, but also their children. All right, so let's go through the executive summary. So, really quickly. So, when I took office, my then colleague in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, had just issued in 2018 his report on sexual abuse in Pennsylvania. And in the wake of that report, AGs around the country, including me, bolstered by conversations that I've already alluded to with friends and people interested, we felt that we should do our own. And as you can see, there have been several that have been done around the country over the last number of years. You know, states have done these in different ways. Pennsylvania, as I'll get into more in a little bit, used a grand jury, which I think I wish we had access to, and I'll talk a little bit about that. In Rhode Island, grand jury investigations, unlike in Pennsylvania, are secret. And those of you in the media, I think, fully understand what that means. We could have spent 6+ years investigating this, charged for priests as we did along the way, and at the end of the day, what you would know about what we found would be what was ever presented in those indictments, and if those 4 priests pled guilty, you would frankly know very little. You would know what bishops between 1950 and, say, 1990 did in response to allegations of clergy sexual abuse. You wouldn't know the scope of allegations against priests that are now dead. What you would know is that 4 priests, the 4 priests that we've indicted, we allege, and they haven't been proven guilty, but we allege committed crimes. But that's all you would know in Rhode Island. In Pennsylvania, they had the distinct advantage of having a grand jury, which allowed them to, I think, do an investigation that I would have, the kind of investigation that I would have preferred to do, but was not in a position to do, because we don't have that. We don't have the same kind of law here that we have, that they have in Pennsylvania. Okay. Let's make sure. I'm sorry, I keep going back and forth, but it's not as responsive as I'd always like it to be. All right, so sort of high-level findings, and you'll hear this a few times here. From 1950 to 2022, what we found was that the diocese employed 75 credibly accused priests who reportedly abused over 300 children. Our list has 20 additional priests that the diocese list does not have, and we'll spend a little more time on that. I've already alluded to the harm that this abuse caused, and you can't understate it. And historically, what we saw, particularly under Bishops Gelano and Bishop McVinney, was that this clergy abuse was concealed. What we also saw was that the diocese failed to consistently refer to law enforcement allegations of clergy sexual abuse. And while the situation has improved considerably, we believe, as I've said earlier, that more work is necessary. And we propose reforms to the diocese that will advance transparency, accountability, and public safety. The investigation had 4 main goals. The first was to provide an overall account of what occurred between 1950 and 26 really, to describe the diocese's response to the clergy sexual abuse of children, to identify perpetrators who could still be prosecuted and charge them by criminal indictment, and to propose reforms and accountability measures. Yeah, I already mentioned the amount of records that we looked at, 250,000 pages. That's a lot for those of you who haven't done a document case. Join a large law firm, as I did at the beginning of my career, and you'll certainly appreciate how much work that is. We talked to, or had either talked to or exchanged emails with over 150 we had over 150 confidential contacts with survivors. We talked to a lot of people that were impacted by this clergy abuse scandal. And as I mentioned, we charged 4 new cases. We added a quote here from the report. And I think it's important, my takeaway from this quote and why we put it in the report and why it's in this slide deck is, and I'll talk a little bit about it more as we get towards the end of the report. But I feel like, for what my view is worth, if you're the Diocese of Providence and you're listening, is this is a scandal that you need to own and you need to fix. And we can't slow walk solutions, and we can't slow walk justice, and we can't slow walk compensation, and we can't slow walk help. We have to own it. You have to own it. The diocese has to own it, the way other dioceses around the country have begun to own it. You know, the takeaway from this slide, some of it I've already covered, is that we know that a relatively small number of victims, survivors come forward. And so the scope of the abuse that we're about to cover is likely much larger than what we were able to establish. And so the office may at some point update this report. You know, one thing we see, and we'll get into it a little bit later, is that allegations, credible allegations of clergy sexual abuse often come much later. And so we won't know the extent to which this problem has been fixed, potentially for another decade or more, because survivors will still come forward and are still coming forward. And that's why I said earlier, this is really a living history, both because survivors still live and their families still live, but also because the fallout from the diocese's failure to protect children, we may see more fallout from that in terms of additional survivors in later periods of time than we see right now. Hopefully we don't, but we could, because we just don't know when those survivors will come forward. All right, here's the legal framework, and I'm really going to move quickly through this. You know, the bottom line is that for individual priests, one of the challenges was, are they alive? And still, obviously, if you're not alive, you can't be prosecuted. So because much of the conduct here was back a number of years, identifying priests that were still alive and against whom we could build a case to prosecute was a challenge. That doesn't surprise me for a lot of reasons, but we did look at, obviously, wherever we had an allegation and we had a priest alive, we considered whether or not we could make a case. One of the challenges was availability of witnesses. Another challenge was, in some instances, statutes of limitations. Not always, because for some crimes against children, there are no statutes of limitation. For sexual contact, as opposed to penetration, however, there is. So, not to be overly graphic about it, but let's face it, these are graphic things we're talking about. Sexual contact, touching, for example, of the genitals of a child, in some instances is subject to a far too short statute of limitations, which we have been trying to change in the General Assembly now for some time. I believe we've gotten it, I don't want to fault the chamber here, but we've gotten it through one of the chambers, but not the other. I believe we've gotten it through the House, but not the Senate. Mark, I know you've been a champion of it, or I hope you have. You're always on the right side of these issues, so that is certainly something that would be helpful not only in this context, but in many, many others. But the statutes of limitations here were also an issue with respect to bringing cases against priests, which is why we were only able to bring four important cases for sure. But when you consider that we added 20 additional priests to the diocese credibly accused list to get it to 75, yet we're only able to bring 4 individual cases. Again, most of that was because those priests were deceased. With respect to the diocese itself, we looked look, as a prosecutor, you always go into a set of facts where there is clearly wrongful behavior to see whether there is a criminal case to be made. And so here we looked at cases potentially against the priests themselves, and then we looked whether the diocese or its leaders could be held individually responsible. Now, certainly institutions can be held criminally responsible. I was involved in a case where Lincoln Park, now Twin River, was criminally charged by the U.S. Attorney's Office when I was there, the case I worked on, and convicted and fined. And so the diocese as an institution potentially can be charged with a crime, as can leaders of the diocese. The challenges there were numerous. Among them were to bring a case against an institution. Speaking very generally here, you need to show that an individual, meaning a person, to make that institution liable, are not only themselves liable for committing a crime, but did so in furtherance of the interests of the institution, and also have contemporaneous intent. And so what you see in this report are bishops covering things up, but what we don't see are bishops advocating for child sexual abuse. And that's an important distinction. That's an important distinction for determining whether or not the institution itself or the leaders could be charged with things like conspiracy or aiding and abetting liability or RICO or some of those kinds of theories. Theories that I think were a little bit closer were things like harboring or misprision of a felony, which generally speaking means that you know that a crime has been committed and yet you don't take any steps to do anything about it. But even there are some issues, particularly in harboring with shared intent, and also the statutes of limitations with respect to those crimes is very short. It's 3 years. We do have a mandatory reporting statute in Rhode Island that many of you, I'm sure, will have on your mind as I'm making these remarks. That is a relatively recent statute, which wasn't in play back when these allegations came forward. And there is also a relatively, I believe, a short statute of limitations issue there. But that really was less about the statute and more about the timing of the allegations that we were working with here. So there are a number of slides in the report that go through the various legal theories because I want you to know and I want the public to know that's listening out there that we considered every possible theory against any living priest and against the diocese as an institution. And living leaders of the diocese, because that's what we do. And if we have a theory and we believe we can prove a case, we'll bring it. But we did not conclude that here with respect to the diocese or any living leaders. So let me just move through this. I'm going to just skip through these slides. The slides will be made available to you. And for those of you who have a keen interest in the law, like Tim White, have at it. That Masters of Law has got to get you something, Tim, right? I'm sure you already know this. You could have written these slides. All right, so let's just skip through these here. And this just goes through some of the statute of limitations for some of these other offenses. And, our conclusions are not unique to us. Of all the other attorneys general around the country that have investigated dioceses, to our knowledge at least, these, certainly the ones that I've identified already, have not brought a criminal case against the diocese. And there was some indication that perhaps a DA somewhere did, but the case was not successful. So institutional liability in this context is difficult, if not impossible, to establish. Okay, an overview of the investigative findings. I hope this won't be overly repetitive. This is an important concept here. The grand jury or no grand jury. For some of you, this is a favorite topic of mine. I would have much preferred to use the grand jury than go the route that we took. So we really had two options when we started. And one was, all right, impanel a grand jury, probably would have been the statewide grand jury because we would have needed it for a long period of time. The statewide grand jury can sit for months at a time. Usually the county grand juries sit for 6 weeks. So we probably would have impaneled the statewide grand jury in Warwick and gone before them and issued subpoenas for documents and witness testimony. As I've already mentioned, there are some issues with that. The alternative was what we did here, which was to do an investigation and issue a report. And that really relies on voluntary compliance with what we're asking for. And I've encountered this before. For those of you who have followed me with other investigations, that are on, I'm sure that you could identify. I've stood before you and I've issued reports. And I've struggled with, over the course of my term, this tension between the best possible way of getting to the truth and my desire to share with the public what we found, where I don't think a criminal case is either going to develop or won't develop on such a scale that you'll know what it is that we found. It's very hard to do that at the beginning because you don't know what you're going to find as you begin to peel the onion back. So this has been a challenge for us from the very beginning of the administration, when we first looked at an incident involving the Wyatt, going way back to, I believe, 2019, in the fall of 2019, all the way through recent months with some other investigations. And so I would much prefer to use the grand jury, but I really worry that in some instances where I can't explain to the public why we didn't bring a charge, the public won't understand it. This office will lose credibility and lose faith in government. So the advantages of the grand jury, just really quickly, it's compulsory. So if we ask the diocese for records and they don't produce them, they've got to produce them. We go to court, get an order, they got to produce them. If they don't produce them and we find out that they're hiding them from us, we can ask the court to hold them in contempt. It's a really powerful means of getting records. It's also a really powerful way of getting witness testimony. You know, lawyers get records and they want to ask witnesses about what those records mean. And you're going to see this from some of the things we're going to go through here. You know, there are a lot of records here that were not woven together by the diocese. They're individual files about individual priests, and weaving it all together for the team was really difficult. The easiest way to get that done and the quickest way to get that done is to take those records and identify the appropriate witness and sit down in front of them in a grand jury context and ask them about those documents. We didn't have that ability to do that here. And that testimony is under the pains and penalties of perjury. And if you just go back to the Washington Bridge oversight hearings, recall the difference between the first oversight hearings that didn't have an experienced prosecutor asking the questions with respect to my General Assembly colleagues, and the witnesses weren't under oath. With the second set of oversight hearings, where you had an experienced prosecutor asking the questions and the witnesses were under oath. From where I sat, a big difference, and I think the public came away with at least more answers than they got with the first hearing. It's a good example of experienced prosecutors asking questions while witnesses are under oath is a really effective means of getting to truth and confronting them with documents where the narrative doesn't fit what the record in the document shows. And of course, when somebody refuses, you can immunize them and force them to testify, right? You don't want to immunize potential defendants necessarily, but you can certainly immunize witnesses who may be trying to protect other potential defendants. No opportunity to do that without a grand jury. Now, we've tried to fix that with our grand jury report bill that I've put in every year that I've been Attorney General, because I could kind of see these things coming. As I began to think about running for office. I hope that this will be yet another example of why we need this statute and why it's not something to be feared. It should only be feared by people who are doing things, candidly, that they probably shouldn't be doing. We should, if we want an inspector general, we want this statute. If we want a strong APRA, we want this statute. The ability of an attorney general to write a report like this and have the full powers of the grand jury with due process protections for those named in the report is really critical to getting the best product, and the best product leads to the most truth. Did I go the wrong way? I did. All right. And this, of course, is a disadvantage that we have gone through it. This is a disadvantage of the grand jury. It's just, as it currently exists in Rhode Island, without that report statute, which would allow us to do a report and release it, this is what we end up with, which just doesn't satisfy anybody. Okay. These are the current bills. So House Bill 8078, the Senate bill is pending introduction. I hope Mark will champion it. You know, it's time. Excellent. It's more than time to get this passed. It will lead to good and better government. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. Okay, so the fork in the road. We didn't take the grand jury route for the reasons I've articulated, so we did this instead. This is comparatively weak tea, but this is what we did. We did a memorandum of understanding with the diocese. I signed it with Bishop Tobin back in July of 2019. And under that memorandum of understanding, the diocese produced records. Now, of course, as a result, this report is necessarily limited in large part to the documents that the diocese voluntarily produced. I have no way of knowing here, other than their assertions that they produced everything we asked for. I can't tell the public that, and I can't tell the public that for reasons I've already said, and I won't belabor it. But when you choose Fork 2, these are some of the limitations. The diocese withheld documents over which they asserted privilege. The diocese, this is critical, refused to make any diocesan personnel available for interviews. Look, the story's told here. I don't know why they didn't do it. I think they should have. It would have helped us certainly move faster, if nothing else, to the extent they had explanations for what they did or didn't do, or about concepts like internal forum that we'll talk about. They could have answered those questions. Maybe they will now. I don't know. But like anything, when you don't sit down and talk to us, we have to draw conclusions from the records alone, and the records are damning. But that was not helpful. And over the years, the diocese didn't consistently document all complaints, and some records, we believe, were probably destroyed. There were, as I said, some investigative challenges even with the records. This is a letter that Deputy Attorney General D. Goldstein had to send to the diocese. Is just one example where we really had to push them to produce what we were asking for. As you can see here, we'd asked them at the time for 32. We had 32 requests outstanding. They'd only answered 2 of them. So, you know, at times it was a challenge to get what we were looking for. Okay. These are the various tenures of the bishops over the course of the investigation. I don't think I need to get into a lot of detail here. Certainly, if you were asking me to characterize where the diocese's worst conduct was, under whose tenure, I would describe that as being under the tenures of Bishops McVinney and Gelano. Certainly, you begin to see change under Bishop Mulvey and Bishop Tobin. Bishops Henning and Lewandowski don't really come into this report at all. But nevertheless, I'm hopeful that now our new bishop will take this report to heart and work with us and work on the diocese's own to make progress. This is a slide I call Heartbreak by the Numbers. You can read it for yourselves. These are the most prevalent age range, 11 to 14-year-old children. I've already mentioned the 75 clergy, the 300 complaints, mostly male victims. You know the rape statute in Rhode Island that was in existence until 1979 did not cover crimes men against men or men against boys. That was one challenge. So 1979 legally is a real change. The highest number of victims recorded was in the 70s. This number of 26, right in the heart of this heartache by the numbers slide, is 26 years. The average time it took for survivors to report abuse. I mean, I know many of you in the media have spoken to survivors. It's a question worth asking. And confirming is what I really mean to say, that these are things that it takes a long time to reckon with. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who about this, and what they said was if I were a child, look, I was an altar boy. I rang the bells for Bishop Gelano at one point at St. Mark Parish in Jamestown, where I was baptized, and my parents were married, and my grandparents were married, and you know, I never faced abuse by any of the priests that were there when I served. But somebody said to me yesterday that if they had gone home and told their parents that a priest had assaulted them, the reaction from their parents would not have been what I suspect would be the reaction today, which is you believe your child instantly and you are on fire. That's much more complicated than that, as the survivors can attest to, you know? The reverence, my dad's 96 and my mom's 90. I love you guys, if you're out there listening. They revered the people in this report. They had some of them in their homes, some of the monsignors and the assistant bishops, and you know, I think for Catholics, particularly of a certain age, this is going to be really hard, really hard. You know, Catholics have Rhode Island Catholics love their faith and love their religion, and some are very devout, and you find it in all kinds of places. You know, I was talking to somebody doing some work on my home, and you know, this is a guy who's kind of a rough and tumble. He's a little profane. He's an HVAC guy. He's terrific. I don't want to use his name, but he described him and his wife as devout Catholics. And I've had some friends who aren't crazy about the fact they've even issued this report. It's going to be hard, but certainly necessary, for certain. We already talked about the 4 priests charged. I want to go back. These are their names: Fathers Petrocelli, Silva, Facette, and Kelly. The diocese list, as I alluded to, had 51 clergy in 2019. They added 4 clergy after we reached out to them and let them know that we thought there were four that should be added. We've added more since. So we have 20 more than the diocese 2019 list updated has. These are the priests that we have added. There is a summary for each one of them in the appendices, Appendix A. So if anyone is interested in one of these particular priests or all of them, you will find an individual account of each one, where they were assigned, what they were credibly accused of doing, what the diocese response was to those allegations in the appendices for each one of these priests and all the others. Priests with the greatest reported number of child victims, you see them here. Father O'Connell had 23 reported victims. The numbers are staggering, shocking, astounding. Many victims were altar servers or involved in youth activities. Probably doesn't come as a surprise. As I already mentioned, many came from devout families, which explains perhaps in part why sometimes allegations came forward much later in life. Many times, like many, as I've seen in my career as a prosecutor, like many people who prey on children, vulnerable children are identified and sought out by people who abuse children. They see the vulnerability and they exploit it, and we certainly saw that here. Already mentioned delayed disclosure. The average disclosure was 26 years after the abuse. Why the legislation is so important to extend the statute of limitations, Senator and Representative, and all of you, because these allegations come late, and that's not unusual, and there is research which explains why that is. The fact that it takes a long time for someone to come forward does not mean that the allegation is not credible. Just the opposite. It's what we can and should expect. And only about 10 to 15% of child sexual abuse is ever reported to authorities, which is why we think that the true scope of this abuse over history was very likely much larger. From the survivors that we spoke to and had contact with, many had behavioral health and physical difficulties as a result of the abuse, and that continued into life. And some people, from what I've seen, and I don't want to speak for them, and I don't want to identify them because I may be wrong in drawing this assessment, but some of them you meet and they're like, they so clearly are with it and are successful, and you marvel at the strength it takes to be successful in the wake of this horrific abuse. And then others struggle. And that's just the way it is for all kinds of other things that happen in our lives. And so you really have to take survivors and meet survivors, I guess, where they are. But it's hard, and to hear the accounts is really heartbreaking. This scandal impacted nearly every community in Rhode Island. You'll see a map in a minute. The other major trend, as I mentioned, is the diocese protected accused priests with transfers, treatment, and promises of confidentiality, and they failed for decades to make adequate referrals to law enforcement. And you can see here that it impacted nearly every community in Rhode Island. Why Cranston and Providence are where most of the abuse took place, I don't know. Large number of parishes there, I suspect, but I'll let the statisticians out there spend some more time with that. These are just some graphs that show I'm kind of using two. Am I right about that, guys, or is that completely wrong? The other way around? It's a previous slide, but am I right about the statistic?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So, is this the one here? Yeah. So, 31 priests were transferred at least 5 times. Some were transferred more than that, but think about that for a minute. 31 priests transferred 5 times, which means accused, handed off, handed off, handed off, handed off without telling anybody in the wake or in front. Think about what the danger that exposed children to. It's really remarkable. And then you see here, over time, there's some good news here that the referrals to law enforcement have certainly increased. Since around 2000, much fewer referrals back in the previous decades. I would describe the diocese handling of those complaints to have much improved in recent years under Kevin O'Brien than under his predecessor, frankly. I think Kevin O'Brien, who came from the state police, like Lieutenant Colonel Kramer, now at the diocese, coming from the state police, in tribute to my state police colleagues, brought and will bring a level of professionalism that gives me much more assurance that these complaints will be referred in a timely way and be handled with the right level of respect for victims that was not always there. But again, there are some things that we think they can still improve, and we'll get to those. And then, this, I think, is one of the most damning conclusions in the report. It's a quote from the report on page 90. The diocese's historical failure to timely and appropriately respond to clergy abuse complaints resulted in the sexual abuse of additional Rhode Island children. It may seem obvious, but I think that captures it in a nutshell, which I guess is why these guys wrote it and why we have it here. I mean, it really does sum up the problem, which is so much hurt and harm could have been avoided had the diocese removed these priests from the diocese immediately upon any allegation against them. Nothing explains it. Nothing justifies it for certain. Nothing explains it. But when it comes to the people who work for you, there are certain things that you can't make compromises about. I mean, it sounds obvious, but the diocese made compromises when it came to keeping personnel who had abused children. There's just no understating how awful that is. All right, we're going to cover now the period from 1950 to 2000. Really here, we're going to go through a couple of examples that will show what we've already talked about. We've talked about the driving force was to avoid scandal and transfers, treatment, sabbaticals, etc. Bishops favored in-house responses. They promised confidentiality to pedophile priests who self-reported. They invoked religious rules and other doctrines. This doctrine, for example, of internal forum. So internal forum, our staff here might understand this a little bit better than I do, but this seems to be a doctrine which allows a bishop to hold something in confidentiality, notwithstanding that it is something that should be reported to civil authorities, including the abuse of children. And it's broader than confession. It's been used in the past as a channel for priests to confidentially discuss abuse allegations with the bishop. And today, it is still exempt from the diocese's written policy on cooperation with civil authorities. And you can see that in the highlighted language. So this doctrine of internal forum still exists. Remember I mentioned earlier, if the diocese had sat down with us, we would have asked them about this document. What does it mean? Are you still using it? If you are, why? If you aren't, wouldn't it serve you better to take it out of your policy? So there's a pretty simple example of how sitting down with us would have helped our investigation, maybe advanced the ball, maybe cleared up something for which the diocese shouldn't take criticism for. But there's only one thing I can conclude when we get a document like this, and it's still in the policy, is that they continue to hold a way out of reporting to civil authorities abusive priests. We talked about the shuffling. I don't think I need to belabor it. Oh, here's the number. If I just waited a couple of slides, it would have been right in front of me. 31 were transferred 5 to 9 times. I did go over the slide presentation a few times, but there's a lot of slides here. Example, Father Joseph McCraw from 1951 to 1964. It really wanted to start at the beginning here. It's a good example of how transfer was the approach. So there are multiple complaints of sexual abuse against Father McCraw at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Providence in 1951 and 1952. What's the response? We'll transfer him to St. Joseph's Church in Woonsocket. In 1953, Bishop McVinney gets a letter from the pastor at St. Joseph's seeking McCraw's removal. And what you see in the documents are these euphemisms or this coded language all the time. Here is a good example. He does not seem at present in a condition to exercise a fruitful ministry. Well, there's an understatement. The response is to transfer him to Our Lady of Consolation Church in Pawtucket. Okay. All right, so when he's transferred to Our Lady of Consolation in 53, this will be his second transfer, you'll understand by this appointment that it is no vindication of your erratic and intolerable conduct. So let's not pretend that Bishop McVinney didn't know exactly what he was dealing with. If I receive any more complaints about your conduct, I shall be forced to remove you from the rolls. Bishops knew and did nothing. Worse than nothing, they transferred priests. But it continues. In 1955 to 1956, while McCraw's still assigned to Our Lady of Consolation, 2 boys reported in sworn affidavits that he served them alcohol before attempting to abuse them at his summer home. The response from the diocese, a 4-month suspension, followed by transfer to a home for convalescents in Newport. In 1957, he requests a new assignment, having done penance and atonement for 2 years. The response, transfer to the Brothers of the Sacred Heart in Burrillville. Remember Burrillville? Remember that? If you go back and look at that map we showed you, we noticed it when we were going through the slideshow last night together, the team and I. there's a lot of reported cases from Barrville, and McCraw may well be responsible for that. I can't tell you, but here's part of the problem. By March 61, McCraw is suspended yet again. He's moved to a priest's home in Montreal. He admits at this now to McVinney moral touches, but pleaded for removal of his suspension. The response? In September of 61, he's sent to St. Anne's Church in Woonsocket as an assistant pastor. He remained there in active ministry until 1964. The diocese didn't include Father McCraw on its list of credibly abused clergy until we reached out to them and suggested that perhaps he would be a worthy addition. This is the 50s, right? And I'm sure a lot of people in this room, including me, weren't alive in the 50s. But this is an example of how far back it went. And as we're going to see, it's just one example. Go through those appendices and look at the allegations against these priests. And look at how many times they were transferred. And think about the parishioners who walked into those churches with a priest having been transferred from A to B, not knowing a thing about why Father X showed up at the lectern that weekend. The diocese didn't tell him. They didn't tell him anything about the guy's risk to children. He just showed up. And that went on for decades. I want to give a shout out to Sean here because Sean Malloy, who worked on this case from the beginning. Sean, can you sort of, so they know who you are, can you, yeah, thank you. Sean is the one who spotted a handwritten reference to McCraw having been accused in 1951 and began to peel away the onion that got us to where we needed to be. And we didn't even have McCraw's files until Sean began to pull at that string. And Sean and Adi are the two up here that have been working on this from the very beginning. And I promised Sean that he was in the civil division when this started. He's now in our appellate unit. And I told him at the time, remember, Sean, that he wanted to go to appellate. And I told him, well, we need you to finish the diocese report. And I told Sean, well, I promise. I can't give you that current opening, but I promise I'll move you. And I kept my promise. I moved him, but I don't think we knew it was going to take 6 years back then either, Sean. So I know you, like all of us, are glad that this day has finally come, as horrible as it is in so many ways. Okay, so the pre-shuffling continues under Bishop Gelano. So Father Roland Lapierre was accused of sexually abusing at least 6 boys between the ages of 8 and 14 from 1975 to 1980. So while he's assigned to St. Aloysius Church in Woonsocket, he reportedly puts his hands down young boys' pants. The boy immediately told his mother, God bless him, and accompanied her to Woonsocket Police Department to report the allegations. Bishop Gelano transferred Lapierre to St. Mary's Church in Cranston on an understanding that no charges would be filed and Lapierre would receive quote-unquote therapy. Just over a year later, in May of 1980, Bishop Gelano removed Lapierre from St. Mary's. He described, this was a memorandum to Bishop Angel and the Personnel Board, that based on professional advice, this priest had depression bordering on illness. Those euphemistic words that we see throughout the documents. Lapierre himself later admitted the real reason for his removal from St. Mary's was he sexually abused 4 12-year-old boys. He approached the bishop and admitted his wrongdoing, and the bishop removed him from the parish. But in September of 1980, Bishop Gelano again returned Lapierre to the ministry, assigning him to St. Matthew's Parish in Central Falls. There, Lapierre reportedly sexually abused 2 more children, 2 more boys. Father Norman Demers, and again, these are examples. This is going to take too long to begin with, but these are just some examples. Okay, go through the appendices. You're going to see the same thing over and over again. Father Norman Demers, 1985. Letters to Bishop Gelano, a religious sister, cited concerns about Demers having inappropriate material in the rectory. He had nude photographs of males, and there were 9 young men living in the rectory under his care. Bishop Gelano asked his sister not to report the information because of the scandal that it could cause, particularly given the recent arrests of other diocesan priests for sexually assaulting minors. Now here, I want to give a shout out to former Attorney General Arlene Violet for 2 reasons. Number one, when I think of a sister going to war, as we're going to see, for children, I think of Arlene Violet, number one. Number two, Arlene Violet, when she was Attorney General, brought, I believe, the first criminal charges against priests, a number of them, I believe as many as 4. And I just saw Attorney General Violet yesterday, and I thanked her then, and I'm thanking her publicly now.